So what are we covering today, and what's this training industry survey? Well, let's start by telling you a little bit about the survey itself. Every year we produce an industry survey which we open up to training professionals across a wide range of industries with the aim of discovering trends and patterns across the industry as a whole. Now this report, some of you've probably already read it actually. If you haven't, what you can do is if you check back to the email you got when you registered for the webinar originally, there's a link that will let you download a full copy of that, of the survey findings, which I'm sure you'll find very interesting. As part of the survey, we asked what industry people, the respondents were in, and it was a bit of a wide mixture actually, from people who did training within project management, leadership and HR, engineering, health and social care, and more. So we think it's a pretty sort of wide net we cast, so it's been some very interesting results. So today we're looking at marketing courses, but before we come on to that, I think it is also worth talking about some of the sort of more general findings of the report as well. So on your screen, let me just move to the next slide here. Let's talk about some of the sort of key findings within the report itself. So I think a surprisingly large number of organisations still use spreadsheets as one of their primary tools for managing their training business. That said, compared with the 2016 results, it's an improvement. Last time, I think this was 47% that were heavily reliant, so that is good. This does tell us there's room for improvement in terms of training companies utilising technology and looking for dedicated software to run their business. But as I say, it's a slight improvement, which is good. Let's look at this one. I think unsurprisingly, a lot of training organisations are concerned about potential implications of Brexit. In fact, just 5% actually of respondents believe that Brexit would have a positive impact. So I think a lot of people are sort of quite cautious at this stage. I think in terms of what concerns people have, the largest has been due to sort of perceived economic impact, leading to organisations not willing to invest as much money in training. Also, digging deeper, we can see lack of EU support is perceived to be a big disadvantage as well. That's probably not just EU funding, but there's also been concerns raised over what it means in terms of a potential decline of delegates globally, and also for employment or recruitment and retention of staff as well. So I think, again, that's a bit of a concern. I think there's definitely a bit of a wait and see attitude as well at the moment. Still looking at this, still the majority of training companies surveyed offer paper-based course evaluation. Actually, again, the 52% does represent a decrease from last year's survey. Again, you know, our view would be to encourage training providers to look at digital alternatives, but for both convenience and also to reduce admin headache associated with collating feedback forms. And then finally on this screen, we can look at 63% looking to increase their focus on e-learning. I think that's very encouragingly. I mean, increasingly we're seeing training organisations look to increase their blended learning offering to give learners options, I think, in terms of how they consume training materials. I think, you know, looking back sort of 10 years ago, there were fears that e-learning, you know, might signal the death knell for classroom-based learning, but I think people have realised that e-learning is a tool to supplement classroom training. It's not a direct replacement, which is good. So there's some of the more general findings, but what we want to do now is look at, you know, this webinar specifically, we want to talk more about marketing side. And I think to start with that, let's talk about keeping up to date with trends. So again, this infographic will be in the report, you will see. What we can see is, if you look at this infographic, it is a bit of a spread, but it's interesting to note that on here that social media does play a large part in terms of how people keep up to date with the latest trends. So as I said, there's a bit of a mixture there. You can see traditional media such as trade and industry specific magazines are still playing a significant role. There's definitely still a market for this, although it no longer dominates in the way it once did. I think people, particularly when we dig into the social media side, people have talked about probably quite a big use of LinkedIn and Twitter to an extent as well. Twitter for following industry experts, LinkedIn for joining groups and keeping up to date. So that's how people are keeping up to date, which seems a bit at odds of the next slide. So the next thing I want to show you to contrast that is what tools do training companies find most effective in terms of promoting themselves and their courses. And again, have a look at your screen there. So actually, social media we can see is only cited actually by a small percentage of training organisations an effective tool for promotion, which seems almost sort of at odds with how training professionals like to find out industry news. So I think what we did see in the survey, that said, is there is a direct correlation between the marketing tools used and those perceived to be most successful, which makes sense really. If you're only using one or two marketing tools, you can only really judge the effectiveness of the tools that you are using. We can see on this slide that reputation and referrals dominate, which I don't think is entirely surprising. Training companies work hard to build a steady client base over time, and retention and expansion of these customers is often prioritized over chasing brand new business, I guess with the hope that by delivering excellent service to a core group of clients, this leads to referrals to other organizations, which again is, word of mouth, of course, is hugely effective. That said, I think we do expect to see a large rise in terms of the use of social media for promoting courses. Social media is the dominant form of communication amongst 18 to 24-year-olds. So at some point in time, obviously, a shift towards that will be necessary. I think if training companies don't explore that avenue over time, then that could have quite a detrimental impact. So I think, some interesting stuff there in terms of what training companies are, I guess how they're consuming information, sort of as opposed to how they're promoting themselves. So I think what we want to do today is talk to you today about, as a business, how are you currently marketing and promoting your courses, and are you really doing everything you can to maximize your presence and doing your all really to attract new customers. Okay, so where should we start? So what I want to do as a starting point here is to talk about benchmarking your training business with your competitors, and I'll explain what this thing on your screen is in just a moment. So to begin with, you might want to look at how to improve your online presence, and I think a good starting point for that is to look at where on the web your website is currently referenced. So what this screenshot here is for a tool called majestic.com. And it's a tool that lets you search across the web for sites which contain links to your site, or in fact you can do this for competitors. So what we recommend you do is you perform a search on this, and what it lets you see for your competitors and it lets you see what websites your competitors are currently appearing on. I've got a quick example here if you don't mind, so just give me one moment, and what we'll do, I'm just going to go into another screen here. Okay, and what you can see here is I have run this for Access Planning. Okay, and effectively what you can do if you use this tool, or there's others like it out there, is what that will now provide me with is a list of all the places that effectively provide links to our website. So these are all places, a lot of these actually are customer of ours, because you can link them from customer site to our site. But I think the reason for using this sort of tool, just go back to my idea of, are you missing, are there any obvious places that you are not sort of linked to from? So I guess across the training industry, there's a lot of websites people can use to search for training. That'd be a good starting point. For example, you've got generic sites like Find Courses or Hot Courses, and there are more dedicated directories, which will be things like findcpd.com, for specifically CPD training. So by looking at your competitors, it might give you some ideas on some other sites that you want to get listed on. So it could be things like directories and things like that. Beyond getting listed, so being in the right place, I guess the other benefit is actually getting links to your site from other places does increase your SEO. Now, SEO in itself is a bit of a dark art, the finer inner workings of which are beyond what I'll cover today. But it's worth giving you a good tip. So if you can get links to your sites on other sites, which then that improves your SEO ranking. Now, what you really want to do is get links on other sites that Google considers good sites. Google does this through this thing called domain authority, or DA, and it's like a ranking score out of 100. And the more good sort of DA sites that you get links on, the better that pulls your SEO up. So BBC website, for example, has a DA of 100 because it's visited so often. It's sort of seen as a very authoritative source. So that's just a little tip. I mean, do look to, if you are looking to get links, then, ideally you'll do it with websites which in themselves are sort of considered good sites by Google. What we'd also say is that, think about, it's not just LinkedIn directories and things like that. Look at it as maybe other companies you have relationships with, so maybe companies you provided training to and things like that, and look to leverage sort of links on their websites. A lot of people do that sort of offer, quid pro quo, we'll put links to your site on our site and vice versa. So there's a few ways you can look to improve your sort of overall online presence in there. So hopefully a tip or two in there that you might find useful. The next thing I want to talk about then is email marketing. Okay, so let's just click into the next slide here. Okay, so email marketing in general. So again, from the survey responses, we can see that a reasonable number of responses rely quite a lot on e-campaigns, but I think the first thing we can all agree on is that spam does not work. Now I'm going to show on your slide here something, an email that came through to me this morning. I thought it was quite apt actually for the webinar today. So this is actually a genuine email that came through to me this morning. I'm not sure why I'd be interested in pipe and hose fittings from India, but this is obviously the problem. This is the downfall to email marketing, that a lot of people, I guess, sort of consider a lot of the things that come in as spam because of the likes of this sort of email. So it's a silly example, but a genuine one there. So I think what we need to talk about really is, if you are looking to leverage email marketing, which is still effective, then I think the best thing you need to do is to ensure that you're not just sending anything and everything to everyone. It's basically by effectively targeting your marketing communications. So what we'd say is use the data that you've got on each of your delegates, learners, companies, and because you will have good insights. So it might be things like, what types of courses have people booked traditionally with you? Well, if you can get that sort of fairly basic information, then it's simple to then highlight to them other courses that probably are of interest. So, it could be even little things like that, which mean you are providing relevant information. So again, we're not talking spam here. We're talking sort of very small, numbers of emails which are really targeted to different groups. So it's about relevancy here. That's the key. So again, the benefits of relevant emails are sort of twofold. You show that you understand your learners' interests, which I guess increases customer loyalty, and also, of course, if they do then go on and book, increases your profits and things like that. I think the other thing to mention while we talk about email marketing and e-campaigns is a huge change that's looming around the new what are called GDPR regulations, which is General Data Protection Regulations. These changes are due to come live next year, and it means you'll have to be very careful about what sort of data you're storing on your customers, and also what you're using that data for. So this will mean that there'll be changes in terms of when you're capturing, I guess, new learners and things like that. You will have to sort of explicitly mention what you're using their data for, and they'll have to agree. So that's, things like opt-ins and stuff like that. So again, that will have an impact, and hopefully, in some ways, that will start to reduce the sort of rubbish emails that all of us, I'm sure, get through on a daily basis. So next thing to talk about is social media. And again, I think from the survey results that we looked at earlier, we could see that it isn't particularly a favoured approach of a lot of training organisations. But I think the first thing to say is it can be very effective. But I think you need to pick your platform and, more importantly, know why you're there. So I think before I say any more on this topic, there is a link here on your screen. We have got a blog specifically around this topic. I've not actually put the link directly into that. I put it to our blog in general. But you'll see if you go to the blog page, that'll take you to the main page. There's a very nice blog around social media. We'll go into more depth than I talk about today. Also, there's lots of other blogs. So I think the thing to say about social media is it will not suddenly generate you a vast number of quick sales. That's not what it's there for. The goal should be to raise awareness about your training company through engaging content. If all you're trying to do is achieve quick sales, you're better off actually focusing your marketing budget on email campaigns and Google pay-per-click adverts and things like that. But social media is great for building up sort of I guess, a base of followers. So I guess where to start. And I think the first thing says pick your channels wisely. Managing lots of different channels is time consuming. So our advice would be is to focus on the channel or channels that work best for you. And as a rule of thumb, go where your learners are. I think that's important to say. So if you are training high-level execs, then LinkedIn is probably going to be a bit of a go-to for you. if you're attracting perhaps younger, lower level learners, individuals, then you might find Facebook or Twitter to be more appropriate. So once you've decided, I guess, which channel or channels, then you'll need to decide what you want to post. And you need to think to yourself, why should anyone follow you? First thing to, I guess, is post for your potential learners, not your peers. And don't swamp news feeds with sales messages. It's providing content they'll be interested in. And I think the other thing to say is that content doesn't specifically have to be about you. So I think in the training world, there's a chance to discuss lots of different things, I guess, from sort of leadership, self-development, inspiration, education, technology, and of course, industry relevant news. And I think what you want to do is keep producing a steady stream of interesting content, occasionally interspersed with a simple, clear sales message, and that's what you just keep repeating. So again, that relevant content. And again, if you are going to go down this road, you make sure you don't start off sort of with good intentions and do lots of posts and then just, leave it sort of dormant. How many Twitter feeds have I seen where people have started out with good intentions and then they've not posted for a year? That doesn't reflect well on you as a business. People might think you've even shut or something like that. Write what you know as well. So as a training professional, you're going to have some real insights that need to be shared and stories to tell. So whether it's a relatable tweet or an article on LinkedIn that positions you as an industry authority, it shows your followers two things really: that you know your stuff, and that behind the screen you are a real human social being. I guess it's a prime place to lift the veil on yourself and on your training company. It doesn't have to end there. You can also use this platform to offer social proof, we'd call it. So it might be things like testimonials from past delegates. And if those delegates from Twitter, so find out if they're happy to be tagged in your post. And that's really, really powerful stuff. The other thing to do with social media is you might want to engage with influencers. So you need to find out, I guess, in your industry who's considered like a thought leader, as often the term's used, and who the most authoritative voices are in your industry. And if you're trying to catch the eye of these sort of people, do it because you want to engage with them and because you want to hear their thoughts or respect their ideas. So you could tag them in relevant posts, perhaps including a quote from them, but don't do it in the futile hope that it will mean they'll start promoting your training and your courses to a wider audience, because they won't. And I think the final thing to say on the social media front is don't forget the path to purchase. So I guess consider this. On the path to purchase, people typically go to 10 places before buying, and social media will almost certainly these days be one of the pit stops potential learners will make before choosing their training service. So I guess make sure whatever platform you're on is engaging enough to stick in their minds and offers them a reason to return, because I guess really the aim of social media here is turning your followers into a fan base. Okay. So next thing I want to talk about is analytics. And again, nice sort of stat here you might have heard, which is that it's said that 90% of the world's data was created in the last 2 years. There's no getting around it. We live in data to make sure you're making the best use of the right sort of data and using it effectively. And I think what I want to talk about here is using a few tools within Google Analytics to help you build your training business and increase course bookings. So I guess in its most basic, well, probably most people on this call are familiar with Google Analytics. In its most basic form, it will tell you things like how many people are visiting your website, how they found you, which pages they're clicking on, which obviously could be like which courses they're interested in, and how generally they sort of navigate your site. But there is more to it than this. So it's an opportunity to assess things like popularity of certain pages, so you can manage what's working, what's not, and how best to give your organization a boost. So if a page is performing poorly and receives few or no visitors, you can obviously compare that to a more successful page. What is it within other pages that is attracting people? If people aren't staying on your site, or you're seeing what's called a low scroll depth, which is how far down a page they get, then you could sort of rectify that. So it might be, if you're encouraging people to book a course, you put the sort of booking links and stuff at the top of the page rather than at the bottom, where people are more likely to see it. So learn where your visitors are coming from as well. And the next concept I want to introduce you to, and it might be something some of you have heard of, some haven't, is tagging links with something called UTM parameters. This is something you can do with Google Analytics URL Builder, and what it allows you to do effectively is generate links which reference the source of where they're coming from. Let me sort of put that in context. So let's say your training business is running a marketing campaign across 3 platforms, and the aim is to direct customers to a single landing page that, say, offers a free course taster session, something like that. Let's say you've placed adverts on Facebook, you've sent out sort of targeted emails, and you've also got a blog, and it's mentioned within there. So that's your 3 things. Now, without Google Analytics, you've got no real way of knowing which of these 3 methods is most effective, because they all lead to the same destination, that one page. But by using these links that you've tagged, what you'll be able to see is which part of the campaign is driving the most traffic to that page. So you'll be able to see at a glance which of your strategies is gaining the most traction with your audience. You can also use that sort of tagging method for testing. So when we talk about email marketing, you could write 2 very different email, marketing content. And what you could do then is, again, if the aim is to get someone to a landing page, is you can then use the same tagging functionality to see which of those 2 emails is most effective, what's getting the most click-throughs. Okay. So again, hopefully that's a useful tip and a nice concept to introduce you to. Okay, so I think actually the time's gone very quickly. So I'm going to wrap up just by talking a little bit about us and how we help with some of the things I guess we've talked about there today. So as a business, we offer effectively what we call training management software, which is trusted by a wide range of training companies all over the world for training organizations, and they use it effectively to manage their business. So our software is used for lots of different things. It's designed to take care of the day-to-day running of a training business, which hopefully means no more spreadsheets that we talked about, we looked at right at the start. But I guess it also incorporates tools to help with some of these things we talked about today. So it's everything from making it very easy to segment your customers for personalized targeted email campaigns, which you can run through our system. You can then sort of follow up on those, so use clicked, open clicked, and things like that. You can also hook our system up to your Google Analytics account, meaning when people visit your site and then transfer into our basket, you're able to see where they've come from, page views, location, all that stuff, and so on. So again, our system does a few tools, but I'm not going to sort of plug it too much for today. So I think if you would like to learn more about what we do, what we offer, then by all means visit our website. There's loads more information on there. Or again, my details are on the screen there. Obviously it'd be great to hear from you. So by all means, drop me an email or give me a call. So what we've got now is I've got a little bit of time factored in for some questions. My colleague is just going to pass me a bit of paper, I think, with some questions on. Okay, let me just have a look at here. Someone's asked a little bit more about the GDPR rules, what the implications are when they come into play. I guess I can't tell you what the implications are specifically for your business. That's something you need to look into yourself. That will depend on what sort of data you're holding and how it's used and things like that. So, but what I would say is start looking into it as soon as you can. The new regulations come into place as of May next year, May 2018. So yeah, what I would say is don't wait till nearer that time. Start looking into it now. So again, you'll be able to find loads of information on the web about that. Someone's asked about using metrics smartly. I'm not quite sure what they're referring to there, but I guess you can use it in metrics. You can use in lots of different ways. So I guess this probably relates to the bit we talked about. So maybe an example that links to what we do would be maybe, let's say, analyzing people who drop out of a booking process in the shopping basket and then picking them up for a follow-up email campaign. So it's using that sort of information. And again, our system would help with things like that. But I guess, yeah, there's lots of ways you can use metrics. Someone's also asked a very specific question about setting up UTM parameters. That's the thing we're talking about there, which allows you to sort of track those links and things like that. Now, again, if you go to our website and to the blogs, there is more information in a Google Analytics blog that we wrote a while ago that tells you more about that. So if you are interested in learning a little bit more about how that stuff's there, then go visit our website and go to our blog and you'll find out a bit more information on that. Okay, I think that's the bulk of the questions, or certainly the ones I've been passed there. If there are more come through, feel free to leave some. Then what I will be able to do is pick those up and respond. I'm able to does it, so I can drop you an email if you've got any questions in there. Or as I say, do feel free to drop me an email over or give me a ring. So I think that the only thing to say we're left with here is thank you very much for your time today. Hopefully you'll have taken out of that maybe a few tips for maybe a bit of food for thought about other ways you can go about marketing your business. Obviously, there's lots of different ways you can do it, lots of different approaches. But if any of those tips today benefit your business, then hopefully you'll find this worthwhile. So I'll leave you there. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. And I'm sure we'll keep you informed about other webinars we'll be running in due course as well. You will get a follow-up email, everyone, as well after this webinar. So thanks.